Interested to get the four of you's opinion on what trends are really shaping cybersecurity these days, whether it's legislation or whether it's startups. Katrina, what do you think? What are big trends out there in cybersecurity now?
Well, I think legislation is definitely going to continue to be a big story. Right now, there's a lot of back and forth discussion about what needs to happen at the federal level as opposed to the state level. And from the mainstream user, there's a lot of pressure on the federal level to somehow fix the problem of their data being collected or breached or otherwise misused. However, as it turns out, some of them may actually already be well protected or better protected by some of their state laws that are already in place, and some of those state lawmakers are worried about being overridden by something that may not be effective at all. So we're going to be hearing a lot about that. And then another one that we've been following at IT Business Edge that I just find really interesting is actually an insurance product. There is a cybersecurity insurance protection, sometimes it's called by other names, corporate insurance perhaps, that companies can purchase. And it's been around for a little while, but right now it's really starting to take off. And I talked to a VP of a risk management company recently, and she told me that in the last year, most of the premiums for that type of protection have been paid by SMBs. But because of the enormously well-covered breaches in the last year, enterprises are now starting to become hot commodities in this area and buying the coverage, and it's going to grow up to a $2 billion niche. It's the fastest growing industry niche right now in the US.
I believe it, yeah. Cybersecurity insurance, that sounds like a very fast growing niche.
Yeah, and so one interesting thing about it that we expect to see is that it actually can push some positive changes. The premiums, when a coverage is purchased, it can require certain protections to be in place at the client's place of business. If those are put into place, they can lead to better outcomes, fewer difficulties, fewer breaches, and then that can lower their premiums. And so we have a very positive circle of action here going.
A virtuous circle, yeah. Sean, what's your sense? What trends are big and really shaping the security scene these days?
For me, because I'll take the pessimistic approach since everyone else is optimistic.
We like pessimism.
Seminar hangout here that we're doing. Fear. Fear is what's driving everything today. Everyone is afraid. They are scared out of their pants.
Right.
They're going to end up in one of Chris's stories or one of my stories or one of Katrina's stories, one of Ann's stories that they have been breached. That's what's driving insurance. Insurance is insurance against fear. It's fear.
And it's a justified fear.
Business. People are scared because they see Target, they see Home Depot, they see JP Morgan, they see companies that are 100 times bigger than they could ever hope to be in 100 lifetimes being hacked, not being able to defend themselves. They see Sony being attacked by, North Korea, the Chinese, the Russians are getting into the White House. The sky is falling, for God's sake, here. And that's what's driving this business forward, is fear. Nobody wants to be the victim.
But what's going right? If you look at a trend out there, is there something going right in security today?
Yeah, actually, that's give you my 2-second point of view, and then I'm sure Chris will jump in too. For every problem, almost every problem, there actually is a solution. So the right answer, in many cases, is just a question of figuring out that right answer and configuration. But so far as I've seen, there are very few breaches that I've reported on, at least, that didn't have a solution. So there's not some apocalyptic, catastrophic, epoch era ending flaw out there from which there's no recovery. So there's an answer for all these things. It's just finding that answer.
Chris, what's your sense? A big trend going on in security today? What's shaping things?
Well, okay, there's lots of stuff to talk about, but I'll tag on what Sean was just saying. It turns out that about 10 or 15 old backdoor holes in security are constantly being used. Okay, so if we can close those doors, we'll close a lot of the hacks coming in, a lot of the data breaches, but we're not doing that. Why? I'm sure I don't know. But what hackers tend to do is they've got this protocol where they hit, one common back door, and then that doesn't work, go to the next one, et cetera, and then by the time they get to about 10 or 15, they're in. Either they've found a password, or they've gotten into a virtual private network or something. And, if we can close those old doors that have been open for a long time, some people go out of business. Not all of them, but some. So that's a trend we need to look at. Is we need to relook at our systems, and things were taken for granted. We got to plug those holes. So that's not a trend; it's just a piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did hear when we were talking about a minute ago about these nation states, and what Edward Norton, what's his name, Snowden had Edward Norton. Sorry.
Him too.
Yeah. He kind of looks like him, as a matter of fact. Maybe they'll play him in the movie.
Exactly.
But I heard a story at RSA yesterday that I thought was really interesting, and I bet you Sean's probably heard this one too. But in Eastern Europe, namely Russia, there are places that look like Silicon Valley. I mean, they're big, tall, not skyscrapers, but really professional-looking office buildings where people, check in and out, do a code on the door, or put an ID card in and open the door and go in and sit down at a cube and hack. These are professional companies.
It's a business.
It's business. It's a big business.
Right.
And you would never know it unless, these are all kind of secret. They don't have signs on them saying, Hacking Incorporated.
Right.
But these are businesses that are worldwide. They are extremely sophisticated. They have things like complete call centers that sound real. They act like banks and get you on the phone and tell you to give them information, et cetera, et cetera. It's all incredibly well run and sophisticated. That's what we're up against in a lot of these cases.
And what's your sense of a trend shaping security these days?
Well, I have to go with one of my smartest writers for eSecurity Planet, Sean Michael Kerner, who is sitting in with us today. Yes, and I would say that basically there's this growing awareness that the traditional perimeter approach to defense is not working at all, basically just not cutting it. You do still have to have traditional things like firewalls and antivirus, but now people need to use multiple overlapping tools to get more complete protection.
Absolutely. The one thing I've noticed is definitely the consumerization of IT is creating its own security headaches. It's employees using, God forbid, P2P applications through the company network. They have their own gadgets. They're using their own software.
Yes.
It's like, it's the company has become a very porous entity. And there was something that, Chris, you had written, I think it was from RSA. You quoted from Jeff Moss, who is the founder of the DevCon and the Black Hat conferences, and he said, quote, I'd be really good with like 80% security because we're never going to get to 100% security. And Sean, you've got the prop. The actual Black Hat, is that a sticker from the show?
Yep.
You were there. Yeah.
Yeah, always good.